field validation is broken in FileMaker Pro. This method of validating data by the dialog box that you see here, which is at the table level, at the field level, really doesn't really work. But field validation is extremely important. I just think, in my opinion, that it should be done elsewhere and it should be done better. So welcome to the opinion page. I'm Matt Navarre. Let's dive in. So here is an example database that has 100 contacts, a very simple relationship from organization to person. And we're going to take a look at two examples, starting with the primary key and the validation there. And then we'll go on to some date validation. These things apply to many other types as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run an import. So I've got a sample set of data, 10 records in it. And notice that down here in the corner, we've got the checkbox checked to automatically enter data. That's things like the primary key, creation, etc. When we import the data, we get no errors, and we have records, and we can go ahead and edit them. Okay, let's try the second import, and this one is going to be broken in a specific way. Because we're humans, this is a way that probably you'll encounter. I would say it's a matter of when, not a matter of if. Down here in the corner, FileMaker has a feature that's pretty cool, came not all that long ago, where you can actually choose the import on a field-by-field basis. We're going to turn off the creation timestamp. So we're going to be importing records and leave the creation timestamp empty. Okay, so here's the records. Notice no errors. And everything looks correct with the record. But if we try to make an edit, we'll get an error message saying the creation timestamp is not defined. Now, it's not on the layout. So what are our choices, right? We can hit cancel. But then if we still can't actually do anything, we can get out of this in just two ways. One, maybe three. We can revert the record. Not obvious, but you can do that. We can delete the record. So with this error message, I can still actually, let's see, cancel record and delete. So this will actually work on a record that can't be committed. Obviously not something you really want to do. This is kind of even worse though, because if you are going through the record and making some edits, Boulevard, Springfield, Illinois, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, go into the date, do something, put a name in. So I've done all of these changes, and then only when I try to commit the record do I see this dialog box that I can't do anything about. So again, if I click revert here, I will lose the creation of the record, or in this case, it's already exists, but I'll lose all of the changes that I made. Definitely not what you want your user to see. Let's take a look at one other case involving validation at this level. So by the way, let me go to the graph. So if we take a look, these are the standard settings. So the exact default fields that I get. Primary key has validation that it's not empty and it's unique, and it cannot be edited. And the creation timestamp is the one that's auto-enter, but it's validated only during data entry, which is the default. Otherwise, we would have gotten some errors in the import process. Let's take a look at one other thing that you may or may not have known, and that's this. If we want to, well, let me just dive into the script, right? So here's a script that limits a record found set to just the single record that we're on. So in this way, it goes into find mode, grabs the ID of the record we're on, does a search for it, and then now we're looking at that record. So pretty common way to do this. Well, because we're human, if we went into that, and this happened, I moved that line of code up two steps, and I debug that, and I then click this button. So now what's going to happen is we're not in find mode, and the set field command actually erases the primary key, even though the checkbox was set to not allow it to be edited. So important to note, Set field can override whatever you have in your default settings. So then it proceeds with the script. It goes into find mode, but it can't because the field doesn't have a value. I'll have to click continue. I'll get another error. And then I'll be stuck with the record just as before that I can't get out of. Right? It says there's no key. I cannot edit. And I may or may not even be able to revert. So that's actually kind of cool that you are able to revert it, even though a script set it. But that's not something a user is really going to be able to figure out. Okay, onward. Let's take a look at dates, and we have some interesting timing here. So because of a recent feature that came out regarding validation, 2 different ways to validate a date field. So, and of course, there's many more than that, but let's take a look at the way that it was done for decades. Managed database, we've got the date A field. I'll do it by calculation, and a really simple calculation that says it can't be in the past. I'm going to put this on the clipboard because we're going to be using this in a little while. So basically, that's that. And if I try to edit a date or create a date here, I can put today's date in, no problem. Not on this record, though. Let me go to a different record. Okay, I'll put a date in. And it works for today, works for another day in the future. But if I try to put an earlier date, it doesn't give me an error until I click out. And then it says it's defined to contain only specific values. Okay, let's pause here because I love this dialog box. And by love, I mean hate. Okay, if you click yes, it allows the value. If you click no, you get a really interesting thing. You click no, and then it doesn't do anything. It just keeps going back and sort of presumes you're going to change it. And then, of course, revert record, we know, kind of goes to the previous value, which means all the other changes you make will also be reverted, not just this one entry, which is bad. Okay. There's a new feature that is here that makes it perhaps slightly less bad. And that is you can have a custom message that appears when a user does something. So that's can be a calculation now, because the calculation dialog is everywhere. So if I change this one now to make it 12:1, it says, hey, that day won't work, allow it anyway. I still get the same choices. I can't really override these, but now at least I can say, yes, allow it. Okay, let's go on to the plan B, to the next one here. So this is validation using a script trigger. There are a lot of ways to do this. There's the new features in the last, several versions of FileMaker ago now. That happens when anytime you try to close the window or make any kind of a change. That one is a little bit more involved to set up. So I'm just going to show a really simple script trigger that runs on object save. So click on it on object save. I'm running validate by script. This gives you way more control. Let's take a look at the script and then we'll play with what it does. So it checks to see various different conditions. Is it in the recent past? Is it in the distant past? Is it in the future? Or is it, okay, and then it can do different things based on what you have. So if I put a date in, that's today, all is good. If I put it in for an earlier date, it says the date has passed, but it allows it to exist. So that's kind of a nicer one than we saw with this one. If I put it really far in the past, this is an interesting one. It says you can't do it, and it deletes it. So that's a really good feature, I think, because you can actually control that. If we put it in the future, it puts it in yellow if it's a certain time in the future. And if it's really far in the future, it will give you an error saying that it can't do it. And it gives you this warning. So not only do we have conditional formatting, but we have conditional visibility on an object. These are some of the biggest reasons that I really think that validation is not good at this level and why it's better to do it in other ways. Thanks very much for your time.